And this next final guest, her book is somewhat historic too, but it's fictional. But to me, it seems like it's really based on real something real. So Christina Hammonds Reed, welcome to Black Authors Matter TV.
Thank you so much for having me. I was just watching you guys on Facebook right now.
Oh, you were okay.
Yeah, just
Okay.
listening to the conversation,
Oh, see,
right?
Yeah,
you're
we
one
have
of those people who start watching it on Facebook and get so carried away you forget to log in, right?
that does happen. So you have a new book
I
called
do.
The Johnson Four, and I know that it is it's probably loosely based on the Jackson Five. That's the first thing that came to my mind, um, because it's about a singing group from the past. So, um, put the book up again because it was so quick. It was like a flash, and
That's
so
cute.
and you
I
have
like the
vinyl on
records
there.
and and the bell bottoms
Yeah,
Right?
you got
and the
vinyl.
butterfly collars, kind of like what I have on right now.
Yes.
And the
The big
different colors,
lapels.
the colors,
Yeah, we worked on
mid.
trying to make sure we got like I actually used as one of the inspirations for telling the artist one of Michael's first appearances on television. So I was like, let's like
Okay,
try
was
and use
was
that
it
as the inspiration.
And that looks
was it
like a
on the
very
Ed
thick
Sullivan
book.
show?
It is a very thick book, so
It
it's
is
That's
a
a
kind
thick
of
book.
textbook.
Mhm. It is, but it's big print, I think. Isn't it a YA book?
no, it's actually an adult book. It's an
Oh, it's
adult
not a
book.
YA book. I thought it was a
Yeah,
YA book because
no,
your
it's a
other book was.
yes, my first book was a YA book, and this was sort of a departure from that. It's an adult book. It's very firmly for adults, and it's
Oh,
loosely based on not loosely based. I should say that the Jackson Five were an inspiration for the characters, but it completely departs from their story altogether. So it's the story of these four or these three boys who are trying really hard to be like the Jackson Five. And on their way home from a failed audition, they encounter this little baby minstrel ghost who then stows away with them and changes the entire course of their lives. So it's this family epic that spans from like 1969 to 1995, as we watch the boys grow up and see where their paths diverge. And yeah, it was really fun to actually get to write for adults after writing the YA.
oh,
Nice.
okay. Now, your first book was called The Black Kids,
Hmm.
and that was a YA book. And uh, this this book are the two books connected in any way?
No, they're completely different. So completely different takes. I guess there are some like thematic things though that are going on. Like it's definitely it's still looking at race and privilege, and especially with the Johnson Four, it's looking at fame as it relates to how one has to present in the world. So like what does it mean to these Black entertainers to have to be uh, representative of all of us, and what is that burden that sometimes is carried and the expectation, but also like how Blackness is allowed to show up in those ways, right? Like we see how people treated Whitney sometimes, or how Michael was allowed to be treated, and they had to perform a very particular kind of Blackness to be accepted by the mainstream popular culture. So it's looking at that. Um, and looking at family, because the family is always kind of at the heart of everything I want to do. So yeah, there's a lot of through lines between the two that are similar, but overall they're very different books.
Okay, and you got started writing because of what?
Oh, that's a long question. That's a long answer rather. So I started when I was a kid. I was one of those kids who always wanted to write, and I was reading and writing, and my parents even enlisted me in this writing summer camp. But when I got to college, I was like, that's not practical. That's not a good way to make money. So I doubled with English and political science, and then afterward, I went to film school, which was not practical at the time. I thought it was, but I did the film school, but I kept coming back to short story writing and fiction writing. And after a long, long time, I finally sort of am like, this is what I really want to be doing. And I transitioned back into short story writing, and the short story that I had published ended up becoming the novel, The Black Kids. And then from there, I was like, okay, I can kind of write a novel now. Let me try doing this in the adult the adult world. But I actually had the idea for this before I had The Black Kids written as a novel, but it was kind of like I needed to work my way up to writing such an epic thing.
Okay. Okay. Now, what was the Black Kids about exactly? Just the overall. Give
Yeah,
us
so
a synopsis.
the black yeah, the Black Kids is about Ashley, who is a very privileged girl in 1992 on the eve of the LA riots, and it's actually kind of coming to terms with her blackness in when she goes to this very like elite private school, and the riots force her to examine like who her friends are, where she belongs, looking at her family differently, and it's really coming of age story, but it's also Ashley coming into her own self as a Black person at this time with the backdrop of the riots and how they inform like how she begins to see herself as part of a larger community as opposed to sort of with her little private school friends.
Okay. Yeah. Going to a
Yeah.
private school and being one of a few Black people. I don't know if that's ever been easy. Um, and even up until like my daughter went to um when was she would okay 3 years she went to a very very white private school. She went to private school from K through 9, but the seventh, eighth, and ninth was when she went to um, because the other school didn't go up to, a lot of the private schools, they only go up to a certain grade. They're not necessarily K through 12 or whatever. And she did up until first grade, was it first or second? She was in an all Black environment in private school. So
Oh,
so she had a really good foundation,
yeah.
a sense of self. She didn't have to deal with the um any kind of prejudice or just now, people who are wealthy, their kids can be some of the meanest people.
Hmm.
Or the actually, sometimes I feel like it's not as much I mean, wealthy kids can be mean, but the kids who think they're wealthy or the kids who want to be wealthy, though they're actually the worst ones. They're actually worse than the actual wealthy kids.
Oh, you think so? Well, the wealthy ones are pretty bad.
No, well, I mean, see, you have to realize, see, I'm in the military environment and I live in Prince
Oh,
George's County.
okay,
So so
okay.
so we see people who often um you they have a little bit of status because they have a little bit more than
Mm-hmm.
the average person,
Person.
but
Okay,
they may not have as much as the actual wealth.
okay.
But because they have a little bit more than the average person, they try to put themselves on the same level playing field as the person who has the actual wealth. And so they start to look down their nose at certain people and they want to pretend that they're better than, or they think they start
Interesting.
to feel that they're better than, and they start to be a little bit mean about it.
Okay. They could be more. They could be worse.
Yeah.
When I went to Georgetown, that was when I experienced the mean wealthy people and being only one of a few Black people. And the wealthy people were even mean to white middle class people. They were just mean, you know.
Mhm.
So
And
with
and don't
us,
get me
we were
wrong. I mean, yeah,
invisible.
there are people mean. Like for instance, like I said, I was in a military environment, and there was a time when I sent my daughter on a trip. And I was out of town, so she needed money for the trip, and because I was out of town, I wasn't able to get her the money. And a white girl who I guess her mother, I think her parent was an officer who was able to give her a lot of money, maybe even give her a credit card, and said, "Well, why don't you just have your mom put some money on your credit card for you?" And she's like, "Well, my mom's not here, she can't do that." Oh, so your mom can't do that? Your mom can't put the money on the card for you? Very, very mean and
Yeah,
snide.
very very condescending. Very.
Right, right. So I get what you're saying. So yeah, I mean, there's mean on both sides. There's mean wealthy people, and then they're mean the mean want to be wealthy people because they have a little bit more than the average person. So that's all I'm saying. There's on both
We didn't
I
know we were
agree,
going to get
though.
on
I
the
think
same
there's
page.
like levels. Everybody wants to look down on somebody, right? I think
Yeah,
exactly, and
unfortunately in
yeah,
this
that's
country,
exactly what it is, Christina.
yeah,
Everybody wants to feel that they can look down on somebody
yeah.
else.
hmm
Mhm. And then
yeah,
it just gets complicated when you add race into it as well. So,
Yeah.
yes, it does.
yeah.
hmm It does. In some ways, it gives them more license to be me.
Yeah.
So there was uh, interesting take on that. And so, how did people respond? Like your book is for young adults or teenagers. Like, are you, what kind of feedback are you getting from the young people reading your book? Well,
So from
the
the
black kids first,
was,
because I
yeah.
want to hear about
So the
that.
Black Kids was definitely for young people, and I actually had a really wonderful response to that. Like I had a lot of teenagers who are passionate about the book and would even try and DM me. I spoke to kids in schools, and it's just been a very like affirming thing to be able to speak to young people and to hear their voices and to hear how it sort of how it connected with them, especially because it came out in 2020. So it was when everything was happening at that time. So there were a lot of parallels between 2020 and 1992 in terms of what we were talking about with policing and media and how media shapes how we interpret certain events. And all of these different conversations that we were having that the kids were really finding that it resonated with them. And even recently, I went to go speak to a group of kids, and then they were still like really invested in it. So it was really lovely. But for this book, I'm excited because it's a whole different demographic, because this is definitely for grown folks.
Okay, see, I thought
And
it was for like young people, so
oh no.
children or young adults. So,
Yeah, no,
so
it
I'll get a
actually,
copy because I want to see what kind of parallels, what kind of you do with the Johnson Four as opposed to the Jackson Five.
yeah. So it just, I mean, it starts with them wanting to be like the Jackson Five, but they're very
Mhm.
both similar and different family. They actually fail their audition for somebody who's like a stand-in for Barry Gordy. But they are trying so hard, and they have these parents who are really pushing them. The father is very like, this is what we need to do to sort of rise above racism at this time and to elevate our status. And he's very much invested in making his kids almost safe from the racism of the time. But it backfires in a lot of ways. And the ghost that comes into their lives really um, greatly transforms the trajectory of their lives. So it follows them all the way from when they're like 12, 13, 14 to when they're in their late 20s. So it's really like and we get the perspectives of the parents and of other people who come into their lives. So it's definitely a far more adult book. I wouldn't recommend it for teenagers.
Oh, okay, okay.
Yeah.
Um, so,
I'm glad you
so
put that out there like
yeah,
that.
Yeah, I was like, do not give this to your
okay,
15-year-old. It is for
okay,
mature grown people.
okay. Since you said there were parallels, uh, did you like watch Jackson Five documentaries, or how did you? Because you're a young person, so you didn't grow up with the Jackson Five or even the Jacksons or Michael.
Oh, I
So
grew up with
you
Michael.
grew
I'm
up
not
with
as young as I
Michael.
look.
Okay, you're not that young. Okay, so how did you like? What did you do for your research
Oh, I
on
did a lot. I think
Jackson Five?
it's kind of lovely because it was the music that I was immersed in growing up, because it's the music that was kind of the soundtrack of my parents' childhoods too. So
Okay.
I was always listening to oldies at the time. And so it was music that was kind of already in my heart. But then to do research, I was immersing myself in the music and reading different biographies. I read a whole bunch of different celebrity biographies. Michael Jackson's was one of them, but also Mariah Carey's and Britney Spears and um, oh my goodness, Matthew Chandler, the guy who played Chandler. I can't remember his name right now. I'm pregnant, so I have pregnancy brain.
Oh,
Um, but I read a bunch of different celebrity biographies, and I read Lamont Dozier's book, and
okay.
he was one of the big songwriters for
For
Motown. So it
that
was just kind
time.
of, yeah. So it was a lot of like just trying to, and I what else did I read? I read the Ronettes, or yes, the Ronettes, biography, or one of the biographies. So it was really just trying to watch and read and listen as much as possible, to get a better sense of things. Because even though I'd grown up sort of hearing this stuff and imagining and reading all kinds of books, I wanted to make sure that I was getting things accurate on the page as much as possible. And especially because the book spans all of these different worlds. We eventually go into Vietnam, and I wanted to make sure I got the Black
Mm-hmm.
experience of Vietnam because it was a very different thing than what the white experience is portrayed as. And we go into a mental institution, so I wanted to sort of see how that's treated and how a Black child might have been treated within that capacity in the 60s and 70s versus now. I just like all these different worlds that I really had to like deep dive into, which is why it ended up taking me so long. Um, but it's fun. I really like research. I'm a history buff, so if I could, if
Hotel.
I might go back and like do a whole history PhD because I really love just putting it on the page and investing these characters' lives and weaving all of this in. So yeah, it was fun for me. I like research. I kind of have to be pulled back a little bit because I get a little too into it.
Yeah, a lot of people, uh, young people in this era, they would probably be surprised at how big the Jacksons were as a
Yeah,
Yeah.
group. They were a phenomenon.
yeah.
Um, and they had a cartoon series about them.
I remember the
Um,
cartoon. I used to like the cartoon, and I don't feel like it lasted very long.
No,
I don't
it's just
think
a few
it did.
seasons, I think, if I
Mm-mm.
remember correctly.
Yeah.
But it all kind of happened at the same time. It was like they were hot and everything. It was about, everything was hot that they were doing. Um, and then during the time that they came on the scene and were really exploded, and I don't know this for a fact, but I think everybody suspects it. Everybody black suspects it. The Osmonds, that was a group, a family group that
Yeah.
they created to
Yeah,
kind of compete
Yep.
because the Jackson Five got so big
yeah.
that it was like they had to have somebody else.
Hmm.
And in the Osmonds, even I think it was the same number of people,
Yeah.
and they even tried to do some of the dance moves, which they couldn't do. but, but they created them just so it was
Yeah.
like they couldn't allow the Jacksons to get all of the thunder. They had to create a counter. Uh,
Yeah.
and
Well,
so,
and that continues, right? Like we see sort of
yes.
over the
Mhm,
trajectory of the last how many years where you have a really successful Black pop group and then they create imitators to sort of respond to that, thinking that they're going to resonate in that same way with audiences. But it's sometimes I actually think it kind of links back to the ghost in my book in terms of minstrelsy and what that looks like in terms of people performing blackness for white audiences, right? Because that's what it is essentially. It's like, oh, well, we don't think that they're palatable, but if we put this like group of Mormon white kids like the Osmonds in front of them, then maybe they'll be just as palatable or more palatable to certain people who wouldn't tune into a black family. So
mhm,
it's all connected, right?
yeah. But,
Mhm.
there was all of the Motown was just really just an amazing thing. There's
Yeah.
a documentary, I think it's on Netflix or Hulu, one of them, about Motown that actually is Barry Gordy and Smokey Robinson
Yeah.
doing the narrative in there, and it just really takes you all the way through all those Motown years and the things that they were doing to and all the success they had. And one thing that they really wanted to have a classy, that was their thing. Like all of their groups had class and they had dignity and style. And they even took etiquette classes. And, it was just, uh, Barry Gordy did a really good job with that. A lot of them didn't get paid, but, that was the industry
Yeah.
overall. And that didn't change over time.
Yeah.
The industry cheats people,
Very much
out of
so.
their money. That's what they do. That's the whole setup is to cheat the artist.
Yeah.
And
And especially then, they weren't getting any royalties. People weren't getting songwriting credits who deserved them.
right,
And imagine
right,
being just a young person in that space, because that's kind of what I'm looking at in the book. Like, what is it like to be a young person in the space where they're sort of devouring talent without the care for the child or the teenager, whomever, right?
right. And Michael especially, he never had a childhood. That's why he was
Yeah.
always mixed up.
Yeah.
He never had a real childhood. Because the older brothers, they were more mature at the time,
Yeah.
but he was the youngest. Yeah, he was the youngest,
Yeah.
uh, but the most talented. They had a good the movie about
Yeah.
the Jacksons. It was like a series. I think it was two or
It
three
was a
parts. And it,
television movie that
yeah,
came out when I was
Angela
a kid.
Bassett
Yes.
plays in it, and the guy
Yeah, she
I
plays
can't think of his
Catherine.
name, but the
Yeah.
one that played Joe Jackson, I can't think of the actor's name. But that
My
was
sister and I loved
He
it when
he
we were
played a
kids.
really good Joe Jackson.
he
Yeah.
did.
He played a good Joe Jackson.
He
Yes.
did. It was a
There's
good
a line
depiction.
in that my sister and I used to quote to each other when she's like, "Go to bed, Joseph. Go to bed." But that was one of the inspiration points for the book was like looking at these different things, like
Okay, yeah, that
all
was
these
it was
different
pretty
pop
good.
cultural things.
Hmm.
Yeah, it was.
It
I
was a pretty
remember
good
it being good as a kid. I don't know if I rewatch it as an adult if I think so, but I loved it as a kid.
one. Angela
There's another
Bassett
Michael
really
Jackson
is
movie
a
coming out.
versatile. Hmm.
Yeah.
What did you say?
Mhm.
There's
There's
another
a
Michael Jackson movie coming out.
I
It
think
is?
his nephew is playing him, right? I believe
Oh,
so.
Oh,
okay.
I
Is
didn't
it
know his
going to be
nephew
in
was playing him.
theaters or?
Yeah, it's
Yeah, it's
going to be
coming
in
out in
theaters.
theaters.
Yeah. I think it's Jermaine's son who's playing him, I want to say.
Okay.
It's
That's
something like
wonderful. I
that.
didn't realize that.
Yeah,
Okay.
it's kind of crazy, but yeah,
So
so
is it going to be a biopic? It's
yeah, hmm
about Michael. Okay. All
yeah,
right. Well, he he really was a one of a kind, unique person.
yeah,
And a lot of the artists that are so talented, like they just have so much talent, they don't live long.
yeah.
They don't
Yeah.
live a full
Yeah.
life. It's
Well,
like
from what I've heard, I've never done the research, but I heard that he died chasing his next hit because he felt that his hits came when he had a certain high. So those drugs that he
Mhm.
was taking, he took the drugs so he could get that high because he wanted his next hit. And he felt that he would only get that hit when he had that certain high. He made of overdose. I never researched to find out if that was true, but that was the story that I heard.
Yeah. There's so many people, right? When we think of like Whitney
yeah, Prince. Prince.
yeah, Prince
It is just so talented. I mean, one of
yeah.
a kind talents.
Yeah. And
Uh,
that's kind of what I want the character to be. Like he's not Michael. I want to make sure he's not Michael, but he's just
mhm.
one of those one of the kind talents where like he's somebody that you know by name and everybody's like, this is the guy. And what does his trajectory mean when you have all that pressure, right? All
Yeah,
that
and the
pressure and all
talent
that
is
fame and all that talent.
right, and the talent is obvious at a young age.
Yeah.
And then it's hard to have friends
Yeah.
because if you are famous as a kid, everybody who you encounter wants to be your friend, but there's not really a friend.
Right.
They
Right,
just want to be a hanger
right.
on. And
Yeah.
so I forgot what I think it was a movie about a documentary about Janet. She
Oh,
said that she never had friends because all the girls wanted to know her brothers. They
poor
made
Jack.
friends with her
To
to
get to
get
them.
to her
Yeah.
brother.
I can imagine that. And that's
Mhm.
really
Yeah.
That's
sad.
It was
You
sad.
never know when somebody wants to be friends with you or is trying to use you to get access to the people you
Too.
know.
Right.
Yeah.
And
That's one of the things that happens in the book too, like with the older brother, because eventually the one who is quote unquote the Michael figure, even though he's not Michael, branches
mhm.
off and leaves his brothers behind. And so we're seeing that like the older brother is left to deal with both Vietnam, but also what does it mean when you have people trying to hang on to you because of who your famous sibling is, right?
Mm.
Yes. Well, it sounds like an amazing book. I have to get a
Thank
copy now that I know
you.
it's not for it's good enough, it's not for kids. Because I really want to read the take that you do on, just how you weave a different story
Yeah, thank
about
you.
something that past events or a past phenomena, how you
Yeah.
created the story about that. Congratulations on.
Why, thank you so much. Thank you. And thank you for having me. This is fun.
Oh,
I'm
you're
glad you
welcome.
enjoyed it. We enjoyed talking with you. This is a
Yeah.
great conversation. It was like all we were doing was dishing. It didn't
Right?
feel like interview.
Yeah, we
So
talked about some things
relaxed.
we haven't really talked about before on the show,
Mhm.
so that was good. Well, have a great night, Christina. Thanks for being a
You
guest.
too. Thank you for having me, and thank everybody who was watching, right? Who stayed up to watch.
Okay. Okay.
Bye.
Bye bye.
Thank you. Bye bye.